Welcome back to Questing Beast. I am Ben. Today we are looking at The Secret of the Black Crag. This is a sandbox adventure for old school D&D, taking place in an archipelago full of pirates and treasure and monsters. It's created by Chance Dudenak. If you remember that name, he also did books like The Black Worm of Brandonsford, a book that I looked at previously on this channel and which I liked quite a bit. Here's our back cover. The seas of the Salamander Islands begin to bubble. A column of smoke can be seen from the harbor of Port Fortune. For an entire day, the sun blazes green. The Black Crag rises once more. The idea here is that you have an archipelago. We have a map in here that we can look at, actually. Here we go. You can hand this out to your players, so that's pretty nice. And there's a number of different piratey locations. You can sail around here and have adventures, but the focus of the adventure is the Black Crag in the center, this volcanic island that rises from the sea periodically and which is rumored to be full of treasure. Now, my copy of the adventure also came with this little pamphlet, The Pyre of Kalon Moss, which seems like a fun little mini adventure to go on. Is you have this ghost ship, kind of like the Flying Dutchman, that rises from the depths, and you can investigate it and fight some monsters and get some treasure and all of that good stuff. But I'm not sure if this comes with every copy of the book or not. Let's look at what we get inside the main book. I'm not sure if this was print on demand or not. It does appear to be glue bound. It doesn't really want to stay open very well, but the paper quality is quite good and the printing is good. So it's very nice to read. It's very well organized, but there is a little bit of cracking when I kind of open up the spine a bit too far, but it'll probably work itself out. The Secret of the Black Crag. I like how it has a little quote down here from Werner Herzog himself. What would an ocean be without a monster lurking in the dark? It would be like sleep without dreams. I'm not going to do that in a Werner Herzog voice. It would just sound ridiculous. Before we get into the main body of the text, though, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Into the AM. This video is sponsored by Into the AM. If you need some really awesome t-shirts for wearing at home or going out or to your latest D&D session, they've got some of the most fun and striking designs that I've seen out there on the internet. I have so many of them at this point that my wife has started wearing them too, and has reported back to me that random people at the grocery store have complimented her on how cool they look. This one of mine is a pretty great companion to nautical adventures like The Secret of Black Crag, or you could grab any of these other options. It's fun to check in on their website from time to time because new awesome designs are popping up all the time. Check them out using the link in the description below to get 10% off the entire store on top of any other sales that they have going on. All right, so we have the overview of the book right at the beginning, and it starts out with the history of the archipelago. Basically, there was some sort of alien race that came from beyond the stars to Earth a long time ago and gave lost technology to the ancients. The ancients are now gone, but they ruled in the Black Crag, and various different groups of people, different factions have lived in the Black Crag over time as it has risen and descended back into the sea. So as we'll see when we actually get to it, that means that there's a number of different factions and different types of characters there that you can play against each other, which I think is pretty nice. There's plenty of rumors and hearsay here, like the lighthouse keeper claims he's a man of science, but he's just insane. False, right? So these are all true, false, or maybe we have some that are only partially true, and you can give those out in the port town itself. The people and places of Port Fortune. So as you're walking through the town, you can get descriptions of all of the different main locations and the people that are running there. You got encounters that you can roll as you explore, stuff in the market square, different locations like the Sultry Siren or the Curio Emporium. All of the NPCs are fleshed out just enough. You don't get really detailed backstories, but you get enough little bits and quirks and pieces of their personality where it feels like it would be easy to run them and make them memorable for the players. For example, at the Stitcher's Shack, we have this woman. Pirates know that the Shack's physic her as Doc Stitcher. Brash, stocky old woman, eye patch, peg leg, bloodstained apron, no bedside manner. Constantly cracks jokes at her patient's expense while taste testing her anesthetics. That's great. That's just enough. The Chapel of St. Sid's, we have a friar who the pirates really don't like, but he's trying to convert the island. Whitmore House, if you want to go to the brothel. We have Mama Fortune's hut. And so we have characters where things can get more dangerous and can expand over time. So for example, Fortuna bears a secret. She is bound by Red Roger Rathbone to Port Fortune. If Red Roger is slain, the binding spell over Mama Fortuna breaks, freeing her. Regaining her full powers, the Sea Witch takes revenge upon Port Fortune by conjuring up a tempest that swallows the island whole unless she can be stopped. That's a good amount of held kinetic tension. There's things that can go terribly wrong and can really wreck the campaign or change it dramatically depending on what the players do. We have a list of 6 different pirate ships here, along with their captains, so we have people to run into on the high seas. There's also an extensive NPC generator, so you're never going to run out of people. There's basically 50 NPCs here if you just read straight across, or you can roll for each of these columns to get probably, thousands or millions of conceivable NPCs. So you could have someone like Rose, who's sunburned, romantic, and habitually cracks her knuckles, or Tetra, who's veiny, superstitious, and uncontrolled eyebrows. The Salamander Islands have weather and random sea encounters, along with the weather, the wind, the sailing modifiers, what happens if there's a gale. You can run into things like a mystic mist, or a gargantuan sea turtle, or old red eyes. A giant white fin cuts eerily through calm waters, circling a ship. The beast rams the ship, attempting to knock sailors overboard for an easy meal. If the fish put up a fight, the shark retreats to its lair. There are plenty of land encounters here, so no matter where you go in the archipelago, whether you're in a jungle or on a coast or in a swamp, you will have fairly normal things to run into: insects, crocodiles, vipers, stuff like that. And then we get into the actual island descriptions for all of the different locations. We have sirens that will lure you to your death. There's a little nest here with people that you can rescue, including a woman who is deaf, so she is immune from the sirens' call, but she will join your crew if you help her. Some of the islands have little mini dungeons on them, like this one, the Temple of the Monkeys. There is, I feel like, some inspiration from the Curse of Monkey Island in here, or the Monkey Island games, which are some of my favorite, and I really appreciate that. The descriptions of the rooms are pretty terse. They don't drag on and on, which is nice. I do think they could be a little bit better organized. Some bolding, some bullet points to really tell you what's the most important things right away would be very helpful here. It's not a huge deal because they're not very difficult or very long to read, but that would help with scanning and referencing on the fly. Love this illustration of this gorilla captain here. I think all the illustrations are done by Chance himself, which is really fun to see an artist and illustrator working on an adventure. There's some nice little out-of-the-box tricks and traps that you have to work with occasionally, like the sun door over here at 13, where it's only going to open if sunlight is shone directly on it. But you're inside a temple, so you have to set up mirrors or reflectors somehow to get the sunlight over there. I like stuff like that. It doesn't have to be super complicated, but it does get the players thinking and planning. Some of the islands are inhabited, and you can actually make contact with the people there, trade with them, make allies with them, good things like that. Skeleton Cove has a Cyclops right here who behaves like a spoiled child and will eat anyone who disagrees with him, but you can use reverse psychology on him. You have the Trader's Arch over here, wind-sculpted arch of white stone. They're really strong, simple images I like a lot. Along the inside, 3 desiccated corpses dangle from the rotting nooses, dried out mummies draped in ruined sailors' clothes. Black threads sew each corpse's mouth and eyes shut. So they've been hung for their being a traitor, but you can rescue them and unsew their mouths and you find out what they really want. Some of them are helpful, some of them are quite dangerous. Brimstone Island has an ancient colossus that can fire lasers out of its eyes. Fantastic. I love the mix of science fiction and fantasy in this adventure. That really harkens back to early D&D, and it creates a slightly gonzo feel. Doesn't take it too far, but just to make things exciting and strange. You can meet Morgara, the sea dragon, or the Emperor of the Sea, a castaway on appropriately named Castaway Island, who has an army of small little golem coconut men that he controls that he will send after you. Also on Castaway Island is a wind control machine, which is a really great way to give players a tool to control their environment. By using this machine, you can control the direction that the wind primarily blows in the archipelago. So if you want to go to another island next, you just point in that direction and then you're off. But of course, other factions could use it as well. Strange meteor. This is a really great description as well. The air grows greasy, skin tingles as if electrified. Trees ring the clearing, bent back as if blown by a powerful wind. A giant needle of spiky green crystal sits half buried in a crater like a flash-frozen comet's tail. Fantastic. If you explore the crater, you can actually find that this comet was perhaps an alien spacecraft of some kind. You can split it open and find the corpse of the alien inside and take his strange red gold armor. Here's the beginning of the main dungeon, which is for Black Crag itself. The first 2 levels are fairly standard dungeon-esque diagrams where you have levels carved into the rock of this. As you get deeper into the island, though, you will find an actual ancient underground city. Reminds me of the city from the Disney movie Atlantis. Definitely inspired by that. And there's a palace there that you can investigate and infiltrate. Overall, I think the dungeon does a really good job of balancing vanilla-style dungeons where there's just a little bit of treasure, there's a monster here or there in each room, along with a number of really good twists where there's a strange trick or trap, a piece of treasure, or a very weird monster that you really have to think about and engage with in a new way. Here's a really good one, for example. The temperature rises in this room enough to make the walls themselves sweat. Puffs of hot steam hiss through cracks in the floor. A sword-shaped chunk of limestone plunges into a quivering vent, plugging it entirely. So it's kind of like the sword in the stone, right? If you pull this thing out, it's going to release a blast of scalding water and you could be injured unless you find a way to protect yourself from that. But if you do pull it out, you can polish it up and you actually get a +2 scimitar, the Tidebringer. When there are traps in this adventure, they're usually telegraphed pretty well, which I appreciate. For example, there is a tripwire right here, and if you trip it, then a spear lunges out and impales you from this crevice. But if you look at the crevice ahead of time, you can see that there's already a corpse there because it's been impaled on the spear from the last time someone went through there. Reminds me a lot of the beginning of Indiana Jones. There's plenty of opportunities to play with factions as well. So if you find this captain's skull, the head of this captain, and you bring him along with you and you befriend him, he can actually be quite useful because he can turn undead as a second level cleric, but only against his own crew. The skull barks a string of obscenities and threats that, if successful, cause the skeletons to become loyal to him rather than flee. So play your cards right, you could have a little skeleton crew following you along, helping you fight monsters. I like how this mutineer captain is called Le Singe, like LeChuck from Monkey Island, and he even kind of looks like him. Level 2 here is the sunken grotto, so you can go down a waterfall to there and explore this second level. And half of it is dry, but half of it is actually underwater. There are rules for swimming if you want to try and stay underwater and move your way through this, but that would be quite dangerous since there are things in there that will be trying to eat you at the same time. There are, however, opportunities in the archipelago to find ways to gain water breathing, which would really help you here. All the dungeons are really well looped and interconnected. There's usually multiple ways to get to any particular place. The ancient city is, I believe, down through here, but if you're smart, you can actually get around this way. Maybe just do a quick swim through there to this teleporter and teleport straight into the main city. The locations definitely feel very alive. Besides just the random encounters, you'll run into things like active battlefields, where factions will be at war with one another. Some of the main factions include the Slagila, which are like these eel people, and the Nephroids, which are like crab people. Another really great tool right here, there's some bubbles in this room that contain water infested with microscopic bioluminescent organisms. If popped, those looking at the bubble must save versus spells or be blinded for 1d4 turns as little particles fly out like an exploding firework. The bubbles are a mobile light source, but very fragile. So basically you're giving players flashbangs that if they carry carefully, or maybe they wrap in something so they won't pop as easily, throw them at your enemies, blind them, and then take them out. You can go down and meet the queen of the eel people, that is Mother Quagla, and perhaps make an alliance with her, do some missions for her. But if you follow perhaps too many of her missions, then you may end up bringing her the heart of the sea dragon that we saw earlier. And if you do that, she will perform a ritual where she transforms into an avatar of the deep that will rise from the depths and begin to take over the entirety of the Salamander Islands. Again, big held kinetic energy right here, lots of potential for major changes to the setting. This is definitely a sandbox, not a linear adventure. Things can go very wrong or very right depending on the player's actions. Here we have the ancient city itself that you can investigate, and indeed it does look a lot like the city from the Disney Atlantis movie. One neat thing is that there is quite a number of power crystals that are scattered around, not just through the city, but also through the dungeons and on the different islands. And if players explore pretty thoroughly, they could collect a number of these. And as they collect these power crystals, they can use them in the Black Crag to activate different machines, for example, the teleporter or things like that, in order to take control of their surroundings. In the center of the city is level 4, which is the palace itself. Now, this palace is not underwater. The whole city is kind of like in a giant cavern that's just above the water, and so you don't have to be water breathing in order to have this part of the adventure. This whole city is mostly ruled by the big crab people. Along with the crab people are plenty of mutants, because what they like to do is capture humans and humanoids, take them into the palace, and mutate them into horrible beasts that are enslaved to the crab people. And if you play your cards right, you could start a rebellion, but only if you take out their leader, Kreshklak. Just as with the Queen of the Eel people, I like how the crab guy is not necessarily immediately hostile. He's not going to kill you as soon as you walk into the throne room. If you beat one of his champions in a duel, then you will win his attention, and he may give you a mission to accomplish, and perhaps you can win some favors from him. I really appreciate all the little nods to Indiana Jones. For example, one of the rooms in the palace has a model city, and there's a little hole in the model city. And if you steal the staff of the Crab King and put it into the hole, then a light shines through it and opens a secret door. There's a huge brain squid in a big pool over here that you can fight. And there's an orichalcum forge where it has a number of different molds. So there's this molten metal, but there's only enough for one thing to be cast. So you choose the cast, pour in the molten metal, and now you have yourself a exotic item or exotic weapon. But you get to pick which one of the 6 that you get. I do appreciate how on all of the dungeons in this book, you always have these little mini maps along with room descriptions. So you never have to flip back to a big map. You always know where you are. That's really the way to do it, and I'm glad it was done here this way. The Crab People's mutation machine is right here. You could walk into it yourself and mutate yourself if you really felt like it. Perhaps it'll be something useful like gaining mind blasts, or growing a crab claw, or turning into a giant crab man yourself. I like how the laboratory right here, you can see that it is the giant glowing brass idol from the advanced D&D cover is this particular room. So if players walk into this room and they haven't seen AD&D before, you can just pull out the book and show them the cover and they'll know where they are. The final room is the Crypt of the Scholars, which is the alien race that came here all those thousands of years ago and started this whole thing. If you awaken one from its hibernation and your thoughts are hostile, it will detect it and will perhaps try to fight you. Perhaps by dumping a flood of knowledge into your brain to expand the mind of your target and dealing psychic damage to you. However, if you succeed at a save, you actually gain some intelligence. In any case, it will probably want to return home and activate its flying saucer, blasting up through the surface and out into space. At the back of the book, we have all of the monster stat blocks where you can easily reference them. They're all designed for old school essentials, so they're very short and to the point, and a collection of all of the magic items in case you forget what they do. Some quick rules for doing underwater adventuring for holding your breath, and a list of inspirations. Yes, indeed, we have Atlantis, the Lost Empire, Caverns of Thracia, Dark of Hot Springs Island. Let's see what else we have here. Indiana Jones, for sure. The Monkey Island series, Pirates of the Caribbean, Sea of Thieves. Great references. So that's it for The Secret of Black Crag, a really great little sandbox adventure. It has everything that you would want in one. It has plenty of locations to go to, lots of NPCs, nice little tools that do weird things for the players to tinker with, some good tricks and some traps. It's a great setting that you can easily drop into any larger campaign because it's islands. So if you have an ocean anywhere, you just plop it into the ocean and it's not going to disrupt anything else. As usual, I will put links in the description below for where you can pick this up in PDF or in print form. If you enjoy piratey adventures, this is probably one of the best things to get. I think it would pair really well with the Dark of Hot Springs Island if you also like that campaign. In any case, thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you next time.